What up, party people in the house? It's Dynasty War Games, and I am your host, Jesse Schneeman. And it's a little scary, but I'm here, Case Solo, today. Y'all remember Case Solo? He was a rapper from the 80s. 90s, I guess. Can't hold it back. Your mom's in my business, if you remember Case Solo. So he was a lot of fun, and we're going to have a lot of fun today, just y'all and me. Chad's taking care of the new baby still. Mike's out of town, playing actual real war games. So I'm here playing Dynasty War Games. We're going to play Indictment today. I am going to be your prosecutor. And also I'm going to be your grand jury. So we are going to bring up we're going to bring up the Dynasty community on indictments for a few criminal charges. And these criminal charges involve running backs. So there are a few young running backs, second, third year running backs. We're going to call them veterans for today's purposes because they're not rookies, right? So there are a few of these guys that are being criminally undervalued. All right. And I'm going to prove my case as we go through, hopefully anyway, just enough to get an indictment, right? So today we'll find out if we can return indictments on the Dynasty community for Travis Etienne, Ken Walker III, Dameon Pierce, and Jerome Ford. All right, those are the four that I picked out. I've done some research and found out just through my own observations, research through DTC and KTC, speaking with a few friends in the community, and just basically figured out that these guys are not going for enough. All right, so moving forward, we're going to go with Travis Etienne first. Actually, before we do that, just to explain, the indictments come today, and then later in the off season, we're going to do a few court episodes. All right, so that will involve me as the judge, and then Chad and Mike Casper as the prosecution and defense. So today is just the preliminary grand jury trial, just to see if we can indict the Dynasty community for these gentlemen. All right, first on the docket, Travis Steve Etienne. For those of you who don't know, Etienne is the way French people say Steve. So Etienne is French for Steve. All right, so man, I got to tell you, I've gotten him all over the place this offseason because he is just not going for enough. This is a back that is 5'10", 215, okay? The main knock I've seen against him is that he's not big enough to handle the load. All right, well, let's look around the league at some other backs that are around the same size that have carried the load. All right, so first you have Tony Pollard at 6 foot, 209. Tony Pollard's going to share carries with shared carries last week with oh my God, I almost called him Emmitt Smith, Ezekiel Elliott. So yeah, so Pollard shares carries. Etienne's going to share carries with Tank. That's great. Nobody in the NFL really has a job all to themselves, right? So Tony Pollard, 6 foot, 209, was an RB1 last year. Moving down the list, we have Aaron Jones at 5'9", 208, shares touches with A.J. Dillon, and has been a multiple time RB1, right? Moving down the list, we have Miles Sanders at 5'11", 210, Cam Akers at 5'10", 217, and J.K. Dobbins at 5'10", 212. So these are all backs that have had success to varying degrees in the NFL. I understand Akers and Dobbins, we're still waiting for them to truly break out. But these are all guys the same weight, basically same weight, body mass, BMI, and height as Travis Etienne. All right, so let's look at what Etienne is actually going for. All right, twice this offseason, I personally have traded Cooper Kupp and Sky Moore for Etienne. All right, so if you're telling me that I have 3 more years minimum of Etienne, a position running back with scarcity, not unlike wide receiver where there's wide receivers for days. We probably go 30 deep of guys that we would start, we definitely don't go that deep at running backs. All right. So Cooper Kupp, Sky Moore. Cooper Kupp's getting old. Sky Moore may never hit. There's a million wide receivers in KC. He's sort of a dart throw to me, right? I would rather have what I'm calling a sure thing in ATM. We saw it last year. The usage was there. Obviously, the usage was probably a little higher than it'll be this year. Obviously, because they brought in Tank Bigsby to spell him, and that's good. That's going to keep him healthy. All right, moving on. We've gotten Christian Watson, a second and a third for ETN. Get the fuck out of here. Sorry for the profanity, folks, but Christian Watson is a very unproven wide receiver. I really see a lot of Claypool in his game. Big, fast, raw wide receiver that was touchdown dependent in his flashes the first year. So I'm not saying Christian Watson can't hit, but man, is that up in the air. That's a huge if. I'd rather have ATN, and I'll pay a second and a third to get to the proven running back production at a scarce position. All right. Moving on to the next trade is George Pickens, and a second for ATN. Come on, guys. I found this one on DTC. This just happened yesterday. Come on, guys. What are we doing? Pickens and a second for ATN. Pickens has not really got the speed to be an alpha, right? We see him as probably a wide receiver 2 as a ceiling. Likely going to have a lot of wide receiver 3 finishes in his career. Really good, strong wide receiver at the catch point, but not that dynamic. Not someone that's going to take the top off of a defense, and probably not someone that's going to command a huge amount of volume. When you look at the other weapons in the offense, the fact that Pittsburgh wants to run the ball, and tied to a so-so quarterback. Yeah, I mean, that's even worse than Watson a second and a third. In fact, I'd take Watson over Pickens because I think he's got a higher ceiling. He's probably got a lower floor, but he's also got a higher ceiling. Right? So here's another one I found on DTC. Actually, I think I found this on KTC. This is 106 and the 304 for Etienne and the 309. Okay, so essentially we're just trading up 5 spots in the third, which is worth a little bit. 304 is within the tier of players I'm prioritizing in the rookie draft this year. But come on, 106. That's basically saying you'll take Jahmyr Gibbs straight up for ATN. Now, I was offered that trade, and I turned it down flat. To me, this is an absolute no-brainer. ATN, right? So you're going to tell me that you want me to take an unproven back who's 199 pounds compared to this back that's 215 pounds, hasn't played in the NFL, is also going to share touches. David Montgomery, they've just shown in Detroit that they're going to rotate backs anyway. And obviously they're going to rotate backs in Jacksonville. But come on, man. You can't tell me that an unproven Jahmyr Gibbs should be valued more than a proven Travis Etienne. This is an indictment. This is a felony indictment on the Dynasty community as a whole. And we'll be revisiting this as a trial later in the offseason. All right. That is Travis Etienne. Sorry for stumbling a little bit onto my words there. I've got to keep a constant flow of words going. It's a little different than just having a conversation with a couple co-hosts. So here we go with the next guy is Ken Walker III, right? So Ken Walker III is probably on a lot of people's minds after the NFL draft. Obviously, we know Zach Charbonnet went there, and it was just a bummer, right? I'm not here to tell you that that's not going to affect his value. Obviously, it is. It's going to affect his production. It's going to affect the just basically the dynasty outlook on him as a whole. But it's just gone too far, folks. I'm here to tell you that I saw twice, right, on 2 different platforms, Ken Walker for the 107. Come on, people. 107 is Jordan Addison or Dalton Kincaid if it's a high premium. For Ken Walker, I'm here to tell you that Ken Walker is 5'9", 211, and had near elite college tape, right? And huge flash last year. In fact, more than flashes, he showed that he is an NFL running back last year. Yeah, a bit of a home run hitter. Kind of looks for the home run a little too much is sort of the knock on him, but I saw a lot more patience in him later in the year, and it's something that I think he's gonna really take a step forward. And if he does take a step forward with that this year, and he does become that more consistent back with the home run threat added to it, man, this guy, I mean, I think you're looking at an RB1 all day, right? Everybody thought that before Sharp went there. He was in everybody's top 5 dynasty running backs, right? Ken Walker, right? Just because slow-ass Charbonnet goes there, you're gonna knock him down. I heard Greg Cosell this morning compare Charbonnet basically to Alexander Madison and what his role is in Minnesota. That's what he believes Charbonnet's role will be in Seattle. You know, either a straight backup or a 1B, right? So Ken Walker's the 1A. He's the dynamic back. He's the one that is going to get the carries, folks. Trust me on this one. All right. So Brian Ford and I, the host, Dynasty Fever, the other podcast that I do, we were talking about A-Chain and his relation to Ken Walker. He suggested it might just take a little bit on top of A-Chain to get to Walker. So I tried a little bit on top of A-Chain to get to Ken Walker. I added a third, and I basically got turned down flat. In fact, that was the counter where someone wanted me to give them Gibbs, and not happening. However, I countered that. I said A-Chain, Musgrave in a full point tight end premium and a third. So we'll see. I'm waiting for a response. I just pinged him. We'll see if we come back with that. But if that goes through, again, criminal undervaluing of just an extremely valuable player at a very difficult position to find in fantasy football. So, you know, guys, really, I've seen all these kind of criticisms of Ken Walker come out since Charbonnet was drafted. Criticisms that I didn't really see strongly voiced before Charbonnet was drafted. So just be honest with yourself. Ask yourself if the fact that he's sharing carries with another back is a death sentence, and if he's still the same back or not. I think the answer is pretty obvious. You know, most backs, 95% of backs these days share touches. All right. And as long as he's the lead guy in that role, especially in a run-centric-ish offense like Seattle, and just an offense that really should be a boat, really should be a huge pie to get a slice of, Ken Walker being criminally undervalued, around a 25.7 value in DTC. Guys, do better. All right. So, grand jury has returned a felony indictment on Ken Walker. Trial to come later in the offseason. Moving on, next up on the docket is Dameon Pierce. Dameon Pierce comes in at 5'10", 218. Wow, that's a little weird. He's same size as these guys we were talking about earlier. Pollard, Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins. Same size. Didn't have the draft capital, but what he has is the production, folks. All right, so in 13 games last year, Dameon Pierce was an RB2 9 times. He was an RB1 3 times. So in 13 games, you're getting at least RB2 production in 9 of them, and 3 of those you're getting RB1 production. That's real strong out of a rookie. And what did the Texans do this year? They brought in Devin Singletary as his competition. No. You get the offense as a whole gets an upgrade with CJ Stroud. They've already got a pretty good line. Laramie Tunsil's a really nice anchor, and they did some more work on their line in the offseason. I really believe that offense is going to be very, very improved, very much improved. And Dameon Pierce is going to have that lead role. So if you're worried about Devin Singletary taking his numbers, I mean, nobody was worried about that from James Cook last year, right? And Dameon Pierce is much better running back than James Cook. Obviously, he's not the receiver, but I believe he'll get the volume that is going to really propel him points-wise over James Cook, Devin Singletary, Damian Harris, these kind of backs. The volume, the elite violence, the contact balance, and just the overall savvy to get into the end zone. I really like Dameon Pierce this year. Let's look at why this is an indictable offense. Dameon Pierce and Calvin Ridley for DeAndre Swift. All right, now I know you have a big name on one side in Swift. He's a little bit polarizing as well. Some people really love Swift. Some people are a little down on Swift for some of the same reasons as some of these guys on my list. I didn't want to litigate DeAndre Swift today. It just, honestly, as an Eagles fan, I'm a little bit fatigued talking about it. So I wanted to get to someone a little fresher. But if you ask me whether I'd rather have Dameon Pierce and Calvin Ridley or DeAndre Swift, I'm taking Pierce and Ridley all day, right? You're getting two players that could potentially be ones at their position. Ridley has been a one in his position. At his position, if Pierce stays healthy and gets the volume that I predict, he'll absolutely have a chance to be a number one at his position. But even the more likelier scenario of there being twos at their position, right? Calvin Ridley being a wide receiver 2 and Dameon Pierce being a running back 2, that value is all day greater than DeAndre Swift, who has an outside chance to become an RB1 in Philly, but most likely will be in a rotation, heavy rotation. And I don't believe that his production will eclipse those two players. Not a chance in the world. All right, so here's another one. Pierce and Ridley, and this time for King Henry. You got to be kidding me. Well, I saw this twice. One was from December. I think that was in the playoffs that it happened. Okay, that's cool because Pierce and Ridley weren't playing at the time. And if you're going for a ship, awesome. But I saw this exact same trade on DTC. It came 10 days ago, I believe. Come on. Who is taking Derrick Henry over these two people? Dameon Pierce is a 13.1 value in DTC. That's just so low. There's so many. I mean, you can get him so easily. You can get him for Cortland Sutton and a third. Maybe you got to go a second there, but I mean, it's just what you can get Dameon Pierce right now for someone that's going to be an RB2. I just locked and loaded RB2 with the potential to be an RB1. For you to be able to get him for that kind of value, yeah, it's just a no-brainer to me. So yeah, felony indictment, dynasty community, Dameon Pierce. We'll have that trial later in the off season. All right, folks, we're almost 20 minutes in. I can't believe it. I've actually been talking straight this whole time. We're going to stretch this out a little bit more with Jerome Ford. All right, so if you guys remember, Jerome Ford was drafted last year, didn't really get any run. He was behind Chubb, Hunt, Demetric Felton. He was buried on the depth chart. However, the reports are that Jerome Ford is next up. So he will be the second back behind Chubb. He will be the first running back to have the opportunity to get touches when Chubb's not in the game, whether that be for injury or, just for rest spelling. I'm not suggesting that Jerome Ford will be the 1B in that offense. I think it's Chubb as the one. He's in that 5. He's a 5%er, right? He's in that 5% of just it's his show. But in that show, in what I believe is going to be a really, really effective offense in Cleveland this year, in that show, it's a big pie, right? You want every little slice of it that you can get. And for Jerome Ford to be just an afterthought, to not being thought of at all, I can't find any trades with him. The player I'm seeing being picked up or being transacted right now is Demetric Felton. All right. So let's look at Jerome Ford versus Demetric Felton. Jerome Ford, 5'10", 210. He is in this same category, right? He's in the same height, weight, BMI range as the rest of these backs that we were talking about. 5'10", 210. Felton gives 20 pounds on this guy, right? 5'9", 190. That strongly suggests that Felton will be a gadget slash satellite back, right? Receiving option, might get a few outside carries, but it's not somebody that's going to run through the tackles. At 5'10", 210, Jerome Ford does have that size, does have the tape to show it in college as well. Was really a good between the tackles runner. I really like Jerome Ford's tape last year, and that's why I have, well, that might be why I'm not seeing him transacted, because I probably have him in half my leagues. But just don't make the mistake of valuing Felton over Ford or any other back in Cleveland over Jerome Ford. Go get him for a fourth. I believe you can get Jerome Ford for a fourth. People are going to go, and especially if your drafts are still going on, get in there, get Jerome Ford. I would much rather have him than, say, Evan Hull, right? So Evan Hull, neither one of them is proven in the NFL, but Evan Hull's got to fight with Zach Moss, right, for that backup role. And Jerome Ford, basically, we're hearing already has it, right? So 0.1 dynasty trade calculator value, yeesh, give that fourth for him. If your draft is in the fourth or fifth, and a guy with Jerome Ford is on the clock, I mean, you're on the clock. Offer that pick to the guy with Jerome Ford, right? It's really not going to cost you much. Like I said, a fourth or a fifth. Those guys are complete dart throws, and this is a guy that we know already has a role, right? Brian Ford's a huge fan. My host on Dynasty Fever, huge fan of Jerome Ford, so he's probably cheering and fist pumping right now. Anyway, so that I'm not going to indict the Dynasty community on this one, right? Because this is an easy player to overlook. I'm gonna make this a misdemeanor charge. I'm gonna let you off for with a little community service, which will be listening to this podcast next week, and time served, right? So no felony indictment for Jerome Ford, but remember, especially if you have Nick Chubb, it's gonna be a nice player to have on your bench this year. All right, guys. That's it. Those are my players. We indicted 3. We indicted Travis Etienne on a felony indictment. Same with Ken Walker III, Dameon Pierce. Well, we didn't actually indict them. We indicted the Dynasty community. So that's 3 indictments that we will have to follow up on and try the Dynasty community later in the off season. Right. So we'll have some guests on to help us with that. Chad and Mike will both be back. Mike, good luck with your war games in Kentucky. Chad, good luck with the baby. Man, I'll tell you what, I could have done this shit all night long. It was pretty hard, but I could have done it all night long. And that's what she said.